Welcome to Slice of Lyme, a podcast by and for Lyme warriors, where we share truth, resilience, and hope, one episode at a time. We are not doctors, and this is not medical advice, just real stories and what's worked for us on our own journeys. Today's episode is brought to you by TickMit. This eco-friendly and non-toxic reusable glove helps to find and remove loose ticks from pets and yourself. If you're hiking, walking, or just hanging out outside, TickMit is a must. Use code SLICE, S-L-I-C-E, for 10% off.
Welcome back to Slice of Lyme. Today, Chrissy and I are going to wrap up our series on mental health. But we did want to start this episode off with a disclosure that we are going to be talking about sensitive topics today, such as suicidal ideation. If you are having thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself or experiencing debilitating mental health symptoms, please call 911, 988, or present to your local emergency room. With that being said, Chrissy, I think that maybe you had some questions for me or whatever. I'm going to let you take it away.
I feel like, Abby, we talked extensively about my journey, but you also have a really great story to share along the lines of mental health and how your story could impact others that may be struggling with their mental health at this point in time. So I would love to hear, what you experienced and what you have gone through with your mental health, and especially you are a therapist. So I find that to be fascinating that you are also trying to help others with mental health. But yeah, I would love to hear kind of your story around mental health.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's really, I think it's hard for anyone to talk about mental health, but as a therapist, I definitely feel like there's this idea that maybe I should like have it together or like present a certain way or like not have these issues. But I think in order to help others, like we need to be sharing our stories. And so that's why I'm here today and I'm rambling. So anyways, I'm starting off in childhood actually, because when we did your story, Chrissy, you mentioned like not having any previous mental health issues. And so I think that's kind of where we differentiate here. When I was a child, I was a very anxious child, very risk averse, right? Like I was the kind of kid who would like throw up the night before a test or like throw up on the way to school because I was so anxious. Would like take melatonin to help me sleep. Going to overnight camp was like my worst nightmare when I was a kid. So I was a very anxious child. I went to therapy and stuff. I never took medication when I was a kid. I struggled with mental health issues and passive suicidal ideation throughout middle school and high school. And I was dosing Benadryl throughout the day when I was in high school, just to like get through the day. Or I would like leave school early or skip class just because I just felt like so stuck in the building, right? Like I ended up transferring to an alternative school and had an adjusted schedule and all that good stuff. And I was seeing a therapist and had very supportive teachers. My mental health symptoms got manageable. I feel like once I moved out of my childhood home, I suspect there was likely mold in my childhood home. Oh. There were also some other toxic dynamics going on in the house, unrelated to mold. And so I think once I moved out of there, my body kind of like settled down. But there was a lot of other stressors that came up. So environmentally, things were different. Stressor wise, things ebbed and flowed, like such as life. In 2019, in mid 2019, that's when my symptoms started. And it was just kind of like the leg tingling and sometimes facial twitching. So I think that's important to note. We'll hold on to that fact. But then in 2020, my vertigo started. And I remember like I would explain the vertigo to somebody and they'd be like, "Are you anxious?" And it's like, "Yeah, I am, because the room looks like it's spinning. Like who wouldn't be anxious by that?"
Right.
And so I had my boss at the time, I was pretty close to her. She was like, "I think you need to go see a psychiatrist and get on an SSRI." And I was like, okay. So that took a while because there was a wait list for psychiatrists. And so in between that time, I was like going to urgent care. And I remember one time I drove myself to urgent care and I was like, the room is spinning. Like, I don't feel well. My heart is fluttering. I feel like I'm going to pass out. And they were like, "Are you anxious?" And I'm like, who the hell would not be anxious? Like the room looks like it's going like this.
Yeah.
But yes, like what came first, the chicken or the egg? The spinning. And then I was like, oh shit, I'm going to pass out. I'm anxious.
Right.
So even urgent care was like, I think you're under stress. So I was like, okay, I'll see the psychiatrist. I specifically asked for the SSRI that my boss took because she spoke really highly of it. I only took it for like 3 or 4 days because I noticed that my leg tingling and my facial twitching got worse. I have yet to pinpoint exactly if there was a correlation there, but I suspect probably it was.
Do you, sorry to interrupt, but do you think, you know, I said I have the CMT gene mutation and you said you have it. Do you think it was potentially like you're going down the path of a serotonin syndrome or adverse reaction and like you intuitively knew that? So you're like, I need to stop?
So I think that I was on the path to an adverse reaction. So I didn't know this at the time. And actually, I don't think this had happened at the time. But at some point in my adulthood, my brother took a gene site test, and his gene site test, SSRIs were totally marked in the red, like, don't ever take them.
Yeah.
And because we're siblings, I'm like, my results will probably be similar. So I'm assuming we're probably just not meant to take SSRIs based on our genes.
Yeah.
So I suspect it probably could have been like maybe my symptoms were getting amplified as part of an adverse reaction. But I also just felt like I wasn't anxious. Like, yes, it's so hard to explain because like the childhood anxiety,
Yeah.
where like I was specifically worried about a test, specifically worried about maybe what somebody thought about me, specifically worried about going somewhere the next day, right? Like I could name it and say like, hey mom, I can't sleep because I'm worried about blah, blah, blah. This anxiety in 2020 was because I felt like butt, right? Like I was worried because I thought I was going to pass out. So like who wouldn't be worried about that?
Right.
So eventually the vertigo kind of subsided. I had, like I said, I had stopped the SSRI and I switched jobs. So then in 2020 to 2021, I was working an extremely stressful job. It was very difficult. And between 2020 and 2021, less than a year, I would say it was probably, I gained 50 pounds. And I had this like puffy, like if you look at some of my old TikToks, I still have the like lingering puffiness, but I had this like puffy face. I was having like drenching night sweats. I was just so like stressed and like go, 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 go. Like I was working at the job I was working at. I would come home, I'd go for a run, I would cook dinner. I would, sit down and I don't know, eat like half of a cookie cake with like a extra icing, like not taking care of myself, right? Like just coping and however I could cope and like dopamine searching and setting myself up for failure for sure. So then I started having these issues where I would drive to work and I just felt like I didn't know, things just didn't feel real while I was driving. I just felt like I was watching my life from I think we talked about this in your episode, but from like a fishbowl perspective. Like I was there, but there was maybe this like glass barrier and it was me, but it wasn't me. Like I was just detached from what was happening.
Yeah.
And so I started having to like call people on my way to and from work just to ground me in the present moment because music and podcasts just weren't cutting it. So like every day when I would go to work, I'd go down a list, right? Like I would call my mom if she didn't answer, I'd call my grandma. If she didn't answer, I'd call my husband. Like he's like, I just saw you 30 minutes ago. It's like, I don't care. I need you to be on the phone with me. Like I'd call my siblings, like anybody who I could catch on the phone to talk for my like 15-minute drive, I would catch them on the phone. And work got progressively more stressful. And I started having trouble sleeping. And so I went to my PCP and I was like, here's the situation. I've like gained all this weight. I am like having night sweats. I am stressed, right? Like I thought it was all stress. And she's like, yeah, you're stressed. Here's the SSRI that you took in 2019. Okay, so here's the SSRI you previously tried, 2019, 2020. And so I was like, okay, I'll take it. So we started at 50 milligrams. There was no difference. And then she was like, you need to go see a psychiatrist because I'm not going to continue to manage your meds. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I saw a psychiatrist and I believe that the 50 milligram dose took me through the start of 2021. And then things at work just kept getting worse. I just was struggling to like manage my emotions. I had some interactions with coworkers that were not kind or not representative of who I was. Like you could just kind of see like if I could look back on it, like I probably would have just imagined myself as like somebody just like peeling down the middle, like slowly like melting into like whatever was happening. Because it just wasn't me. So the psychiatrist I saw her in February of 2021, ended up saying like double your dose to 100 milligrams, no problem. And I was like, okay, like if you're not worried about it, I'm not worried about it. So I doubled the dose. This is before I was diagnosed with Lyme, but I think all of this is important. I was having signs of systemic inflammation, and I was trying to dose and address that with an SSRI. And so now I know like that wasn't obviously the root cause. 3 to 5 days after I started the 100 milligrams, I was driving to work. It was February 15th, 2021. The night before was Valentine's Day. I dealt with some like work drama, some just like it felt like Valentine's Day that year just sucked. So I got up the next morning and I was driving to work, and I remember it was super cloudy, super overcast, and I was driving down the bypass just thinking like I feel suffocated by like the clouds. Like I felt just like everything was like coming in on me. I don't know how to explain it. Like it just felt like the world was a room that was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I drive to work and I get there, and at this point I was taking half of a hydroxyzine every time I was working. So Monday through Friday, I would get to work, I would take half of a hydroxyzine just to get through the workday.
And that I thought that was for sleep, because I tried that for, not to go down a rabbit hole, that I thought that was sleep. That's also for anxiety.
Yeah, so it's actually similar to Benadryl. So it was
Yeah.
actually similar to how I was like getting through the days in high school.
Yeah.
And I was taking it throughout the day or during the day to help manage the symptoms of anxiety. And I had to cut it in half because 25 milligrams would like sedate me. So I was like, I don't need to be sedated while I'm at work. I just need to like not feel like the world is crashing in on me.
Yeah, because the way it was described to me, because that was one of the ones they tried before the gabapentin, and it was described to me as like it's Benadryl times 10.
Yeah.
And so it was to help me for insomnia.
Mhm.
But so, okay, I get it. You cut it for anxiety.
Yeah. So I would drive to work. I would get there. I would take half the hydroxyzine. I would make it through the workday. So then February 15th, I felt like the world was just like suffocating me. And I get to work. I cut my hydroxyzine. I take it. But I just felt so detached that day. And I knew in my like core that something wasn't right. And I remember it was like lunchtime on February 15th, and my coworker had put, so our office was like in a hallway, and then like on the other side of the hallway, kind of diagonal, was the break room. She had put a sweet potato in the microwave to heat it up, and she accidentally left the aluminum on it.
Oh,
and
no.
so somebody comes into our office and they're like, "Hey, so and so, is that your sweet potato in the microwave?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "It's on fire." And I remember like I was just like, I don't care. Like let the microwave explode. Nothing matters anymore. Like nothing. Well, then the fire alarm in the entire building starts going off, and they're like code red, blah blah blah. And that was it. The fire alarm, like I stood up from my desk, I grabbed my stuff, and I walked out of the building, like straight out the front doors. I didn't care. I did not care. And I called my therapist as I was walking out, and I'm like something is wrong, girlfriend. Like something is way wrong. And she's like, "I have 15 minutes. You can come see me." And I like walked, and it was not a far walk. It was like 2 parking lots over, walked from my office to her office. And I walked in, and I was like, I want to kill myself. Oh. And she's like, "What happened?" And I was like, "My coworker's sweet potato caught on fire in the microwave." Like that's my 13th reason, right? Like I am ready. I feel like nobody understands me. I feel like nobody cares. Again, like I had a very unique work experience from 2020 to 2021. I felt like nobody cared what I was going through, what I was facing at work. And I told her, like, I think one of the things I said was like, I feel like that guy from the show The Sinner who was like smashing the chair in the stairwell. And I think that's the show at this point. I don't remember. And she's like not understanding what this is about, a sweet potato. And it's like, no, like it is this like slow burn of again, now I know inflammation, but like I was stressed, I was gaining weight, I was like looking for dopamine, I was just running and gunning and pedal to the metal, and it just compiled that day. And she was just kind of like, take some deep breaths. Like I think the advice that either her or my boss gave me was like, have you considered taking a shower after work to just wash the day off of you? Yes, I will shower after work. So I ended up going back to my job. I spent some time doing some research, and I wanted to go to a crisis stabilization unit. I was like, I can't. I felt so utterly compelled to like end my own life that I was like, I need to go somewhere.
And your therapist at the time, your psychiatrist did not recommend that. They kind of just ended the session with, you need a shower. They didn't say like, hey, maybe you should check in somewhere.
Yeah,
like
just take care of yourself.
Okay.
And I'm like, cool. I sure will. Like,
yeah.
you know? And so I took it into my own hands. And I remember I'm like in a different break room at my job, like pacing around, like calling crisis stabilization units, calling like emergency services numbers. Like, how do I get here? How do I go there? Like I believe it was a holiday for some reason. I don't remember what it would have been in February. But like there were certain like places that were open, that weren't open, and like I just trying to like navigate that. And I messaged a friend from college, and I was like, hey, do you work at this crisis stabilization unit still? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, do you guys have beds? And she's like, are you okay? And I was like, absolutely not. And she was like, you know, what's going on? What do you need? And I was like, I need a ride to the hospital. And this friend I hadn't talked to in years, right, since we graduated college, came to my job, picked me up, and then took me to a hospital because I worked at a hospital. We drove to a different hospital, like 35, 40 minutes away. And so I get there and I have my purse and I'm in my work slacks, my heels, you know, and I go to check in, and you're like standing in front of everybody checking in the ER, and they're like asking you a dozen questions. And it's something to be like, you know, I'm obviously really going through it, and I would rather not stand here in front of the entire waiting room and tell you about it, but you have to. And so I did. And then they made me wait for an ER bed. And so I was in the mental health assessment area when they called me back. And then I, you know, told the nurse what was happening. And then they were like, okay, you'll have to wait for the doctor to come assess you. And I was like, that's fine. So I was sitting there and I was reading a book, and I was just trying to ground myself, right? I thought I was doing the right thing by just trying to be like cool, calm, and collect. The doctor comes in, he asks me what's going on. I tell him the same thing. Okay, you'll have to wait for our therapist or our resource clinician to come assess you. Okay, that's fine. So then I like take the book back out, and I'm just doing my thing, and I text my husband. I'm like, hey, don't call me. I'm currently at the hospital. I just want you to know that I'm safe. And so the therapist, the assessor, comes in and he's asking his questions. And I told him, like, I want to kill myself. I don't feel safe to go home. I think I need to go to a crisis stabilization unit. He's like, well, there's no beds. It's like, okay, that's not what I heard from one of the employees. And I was like, then I need to go to inpatient hospitalization. I'll go the whole 9 yards. And he looked at me up and down, looked at the book in my hand, and he said, I think you're a little too high functioning for that. I think we should just call your husband.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, my husband works night shift. If I go home, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. And I feel very convinced of that. And he's like, yeah, but I just don't think you know what you're asking for when you're asking for inpatient. And I don't think that's a good fit for you. And mind you, like, this is the field I work in. I knew what I was asking for.
Right.
Um,
And you're being denied, even though you're saying like, I'm suicidal.
right.
It's not okay.
So I ended up having my husband, he had to come get me. He had to miss work. And I called my friend who worked in a partial hospitalization program. Inpatient hospitalization is pretty like high needs, pretty intense. And then crisis stabilization, I would say, is like a step down from that. And then PHP, or partial hospitalization, is like where you go from like 9 to 3 and then you go home. And so you get to like sleep in your own bed. So I was texting my friend, or I called her, whatever. And I was like, this is a situation, like, I need something. And she worked at a in a PHP program. And she was like, this is crazy. Like, you have to hang on. Like, I'm going to get you taken care of. So the next morning, the PHP program calls me at like 7:40, and they're like, hey, we have a spot for 8 a.m. And I was like, okay. So I'm like brushing my teeth, changing out of my pajamas. I'm like, my husband has to drive me because I can't drive, because I didn't feel safe driving. And I get there late. And of course, I was like, I told y'all that I didn't, I was going to make it on time, but they let me in, and I did the intake. And the intake clinician, I was telling her what was happening, and I'm like running her through 2020, 21, and she starts crying in my intake. I was like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable. I mean, I get it, right? But like, I was like, I'm hanging on by a thread. Like, clearly you're also hanging on by a thread. So I was there for 5 days, and I still didn't feel better. When they did my discharge appointment with their psychiatrist, I was like, if I have to go back to work, I'm going to kill myself. And they were like, okay, you have to go to the hospital. Now you're appropriate for inpatient. And I was like, I'm not doing it again. So I didn't do it, right? I went home. I decided I was going to stop the SSRI, and I did. And then
wait, so sorry. So you did not want to do inpatient because they had already denied you. And at this point you're like, I'm not going back to the facility that denied me.
Right.
Inpatient.
Right. It was like, why would I put myself through that again? So after PHP, I decided I was going to stop the SSRI on my own, and which I would not recommend, right? So my disclaimer is that if you're taking medication, follow your doctor's orders. If you have concerns about that, obviously take it up with your doctor, and they can help you taper off appropriately. I did not do that. I stopped it on my own. And I went through withdrawal. I was shaky. I was anxious. I was pacing around my house. I just remember feeling like, just so like, I don't know what the word is. Unbalanced. I was just so unbalanced. And
you stopped cold turkey. You didn't do a taper.
Cold turkey. That's why I would not recommend anybody do it.
Yeah.
I did it. I hated it. I was miserable. And I ended up seeing a follow-up psychiatrist who put me on a mood stabilizer. And that actually felt much better. Then when it was time to go back to work, again, work was a big stressor. I said, I actually think I need to go to the hospital because I just don't think I have the capacity. And my therapist at the time goes, if you go to the hospital and you go inpatient, what's going to change? You still have to go to work when you get out. And I'm like, okay. She basically said, like, if you need a vacation, you just need to take a vacation. And it's like, this is so much bigger than like a vacation.
And the gaslighting is pretty intense at this point because it's different. Like, a vacation's different than saying like, I need like help with my mental health,
right. I'm so dysregulated that I cannot even fathom returning to this position that I have held. Like, now, knowing what I know now, I would have been like, quit the job, stabilize, regulate, create safety in your body and your environment, and then like go back to whatever it is you feel like you need to do.
Right.
At the time, I was like, oh yeah, like maybe I'm just like needing a vacation. Maybe I'm just having a hard time, whatever. The mood stabilizer helped. So I ended up returning to work. I did quit shortly afterwards. And then there was kind of this whole slew of like, I hiked the Appalachian Trail for a little, I went to Alaska for a little. And my mental health got better. my inflammation like did not, I wish I could show you like on my hand a picture of me in Alaska, because you would see my face and you'd be like, that doesn't look like you. So like mental health wise, things stabilized. Physically, I wish I knew that, obviously, like I wish I could have been like, hold on, something is still not correct. So
Interesting. And you didn't know about Lyme yet at this point?
I didn't know about Lyme yet.
Okay.
So then in the start of 2022, I started to get sick again. And I'm not going to dive into all the physical symptoms because that would just take way too much time. And we're focusing on mental health. But I started to get very sick. I saw tons of doctors, tons of specialists, ran tons of tests from January of 2022 until I was diagnosed with Lyme in September of 2022. So it was 9 months of this, like, I had doctors saying, like, maybe you're bipolar, maybe you have ADHD, maybe you have early heart failure, maybe you have MS, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, like all this stuff. And during that time, when you're like fighting for a diagnosis, at least for me personally, I felt like I was just so focused on like finding an answer that finally when I saw a doctor and I started to go through treatment, I remember looking at her because she was booking out for like 2 months, and I was like, I think I'm dying. Like, I need you to see me. I don't care when, right? 5-minute drive. I will get here. I think I'm dying. I don't know if I'll make it 2 more months.
Yeah. Oh, I know that feeling, Abby, for sure.
Yeah. Like, and she's like, and this doctor was a huge red flag, but we'll cover that in another episode as well. But it was kind of towards the middle to like end of 2022, maybe early 2023, where I recall my physical health was so bad that my mental health was just tanking. And I remember ruminating, like, I don't want to live like this. I can't live like this. I don't want to be alive. Like, I felt so awful. I became dependent on support. Like, I struggled going alone places. I went through treatment. I would say things really turned a corner in a good way in May of 2023. My physical health got better. My mental health subsequently got better. May of 2023, all the way through October of 2024, I was doing things like I went skydiving. I went to the Grand Canyon. I went whitewater rafting. I fostered a couple of dogs, like just like doing things that like you don't realize you miss out on. I did a fall foliage trip in New England. Like we flew into Maine and then drove all the way down. Just like fun things, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, like life is worth living, right? Like this is amazing. These are all the things I feel like I've missed out on since things got really rocky starting in mid 2019. I joined this gym in July of 2024. I started having the leg tingling probably about a month later, and I brushed it off. And I just thought, like, I'm close to a flare, like it's going to be fine, whatever. In October of 2024, people at the gym were passing around a cold. I got it. My leg tingling got worse. I started to have vertigo.
Oh, wow.
It kicked my butt, right? Like something was not adding up. So once I started to feel better, I went back to the gym, and I was driving home from a night class one day. And I don't normally drive at night because I can't see. That's why I have glasses. But I don't normally drive at night. And I remember I was driving on the bypass, and I just had this huge wave of anxiety. I didn't have a thought, right? I didn't have a worry behind it. I just got anxious. And I got home and I was like, that was really strange. Well, those like anxiety attacks just continued to happen. And I remember like another time I was driving to the gym, and my husband was in the car. We were going together, and I'm driving. And I just remember like this huge wave of adrenaline. And I was on this like country road, and I'm like, I have to pull over. Like, tell me where I can pull over. I have to get out of the car. And then we like pulled into this like people's driveway off this country road. I'm like, we are trespassing, But I get out of the car and I reorient, and I still go to the gym. So these adrenaline dumps were like, the leg tingling was my warning flag, and I ignored it. Yeah. The adrenaline dumps were now the screams from my body saying something is wrong. I was preparing for a jiu-jitsu tournament. So I got like an IV with minerals, and I got a glutathione push. And driving myself home from the glutathione push, I got an adrenaline dump. I crossed over 3 lanes of traffic so I could get out of the car. And luckily, I didn't. There was no accident.
That's good.
But I crossed over and I was like, I have to get out of the car. My husband had been near me because he knew I was getting an IV. And so we just were trying to get home. And so we left the car there and he drove me home. Well, we know, right, that now we know I was being exposed to mold. The anxiety has continued throughout treatment, the adrenaline dumps, all of that. I've had instances of derealization again. Like actually, even this morning, I was sitting out on the patio and I just had this feeling like this isn't real. And it's just such a strange feeling because I know what I'm seeing, I know what I'm hearing, I know what I'm feeling, but like it doesn't feel real. But all of that I would say peaked in probably like December and January. And then I was able to get it under control. But through that, I would say I also struggled with I don't want to live like this, right? I remember seeing my therapist a few weeks after I realized I was being exposed to mold again. And I was like, I don't want to live like this. I can't live like this. And she's like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I don't know, but I feel it in my bones. Like, I'm not going to live like this. I'm telling you that right now.
Yeah.
This is just not the life I want. When things started to get better, I then started to have agoraphobia, right? So this like fear of leaving the house out of fear of having an adrenaline dump, right? So the adrenaline dumps have no thoughts behind them. I'll just go into fight or flight. But now I have this fear of leaving my house because I don't want to be outside of my house and having an adrenaline dump.
Okay, because you talk a lot about agoraphobia and that you're trying to work through it, but I guess I didn't know where that stemmed from. So you're afraid that, something could happen in public or an adrenaline dump, maybe you would pass out or right. And there's some emergency situation. And so it's more of the fear of the emergency situation and less of a fear of leaving the home, right? Like that's the kind of thought process behind that. Am I accurate? Sorry, in that?
Yeah, no, it's totally accurate. Like, so for me, the adrenaline dumps are just like, and I've said it before, I'll say it a million times. It's like this tingling in my neck. I can't explain it, but it happens. And I just feel like reverberate in my whole body. And then my heart rate is up. I'm like super aware. I just have to get away from whatever's happening. Like there was a time when I was on a walk in my neighborhood and it happened. And I remember like running back home, just like out of pure fear of nothing. I just have to get away from it. And so the agoraphobia stems from not wanting to leave the house because what if I leave the house and something happens? What if I leave the house and I don't feel good?
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain to people because I have this support network who's like, oh, I'll go on a walk with you, or I'll go on a drive with you, or whatever. Oh, I think I'm a really good listener. And it's like, there's nothing for you to listen to. I don't have like the only legitimate worry is that I will leave the house and something bad will happen.
Well, and also because I totally understand that because I think I explained like I had gone out with a friend and I had maybe it was adrenaline dump, whatever, derealization, and I was like, I gotta go. So I've had situations like that, and because of things like that, I don't like to leave either. So maybe I have some agoraphobia, but I get it because it's not something you could talk your way out of. If this happens to you, now you're in a panic state. That person that's next to you, they don't even know how to solve that issue. That's something that's internal that's driving this complete and utter fear or physical symptoms now, physical and mental symptoms. And you're the only one that can get out of it. And or like you need to be in a safe space, and your safe space is your home, right? So it's the only way out of it is to really just be home, right? Sorry, because I guess I could say I get it because I don't really go out into social settings because I also, not that I have maybe we have different spectrums of it. But I also am like, well, if something happens, I need to be in my home, and if we need to call the ambulance, I want to call it from my home, sorry, but right. Am I kind of on
I think
the
you're
same
100% right. And like, I was seeing a doctor. I currently see two. One of them was like, I don't know how to help you. Talk to your psychiatrist. So I called the psychiatrist. She's like, here's a prescription for Buspar. And it's like, I don't want to take another medication. I already went back to having to take the hydroxyzine, cut in half as needed. I don't want to take Buspar. And so
Is Buspar for anxiety? What is the
I think
purpose behind Buspar?
I think it's for the anxiety.
Anxiety.
But
Okay.
truthfully, a lot of the anxiety got better when I ended some toxic relationships this year.
Fair.
So it's not just like mold. It's not just like Lyme. Sometimes it's the people we're allowing or we're like giving our energy to. I mean, that could be a whole rant in and of itself. Like a lot of the anxiety and adrenaline improved after that, but it still lingers, right? Because I think that I have reinforced this pathway in my brain that says like home is the only safe place, or I cannot be safe if I'm not with my husband. And so now what I'm trying to do is like deconstruct that pathway to say like I can be safe by myself. I can be safe outside of my home. And that's why I'm doing the things I do. Like last night I went for a walk with my husband and my neighbor, right? And so like the and my neighbor is a big deal because it's like that person, that my neighbor might have seen me have an anxiety attack, right? Like on our walk. She didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't have one, but I named it. I'm like, just so you know, it's been a rough few days. I feel a little anxious. So, and we know like,
I love that.
we know that I have been like going places. So like a few months ago, I couldn't even drive. I could hardly passenger in the car a few months ago, right? Like I'd like in the car praying we don't hit any red lights because red lights just made me feel trapped. Now I have driven myself a little bit by myself. Me and my friend went to the pharmacy without my husband. I've driven to and from my office with my husband in the car, which is like a 35-minute drive. I've done that like 3 or 4 times. So like it's not perfect, but it's like building step by step and brick by brick, knowing that you're just deconstructing old neural pathways and replacing them with regulated, safe, grounded, positive pathways. I think the hardest part though is when I'm doing that and I feel anxiety. Like yesterday I was driving with my husband in the car and I felt anxious and I pulled over and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And he's like, just wait. Wait until you don't feel anxious and then make a decision. And it made me think of when I was training, I was running a lot and sometimes I would do hill work. And hill work, it was like a 3-mile climb up a mountain. And this guy always said, never make a decision until you get to the top of the mountain.
Oh.
And it just felt like my husband was kind of saying the same thing yesterday. And he was like, when you're not anxious anymore, because we know the anxiety passes, then you can decide if you want me to drive.
I love that advice.
And so
then did you drive or did he drive?
I drove. I
You
drove
drove.
us to my office. We had to get a package, and then I ended up driving us back home as well. And so it was just like knowing that you can be anxious and still feel safe. And I think I made a video about this, but not reinforcing the idea that when you feel anxious, you have to leave. The worst case scenario, I think, or at least I tell myself, the worst case scenario is that like maybe I have to ask a stranger for help. And so that's what I'm building up to, like feeling confident enough to go out alone and knowing if something happens, maybe I have to ask a stranger for help. And that might be embarrassing, but I'd rather do that than continue to like live in the shell I'm living in. Because if I had to describe agoraphobia, I would say it feels a lot like looking out the window and just watching the day pass, day after day after day, while everyone is still living their lives.
And that can be pretty lonely, I'm sure.
It's extremely lonely.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're doing is incredibly brave. And I think you're putting it out there and you're tracking every day. And I think I'm seeing like a lot of people, I'm inspired. A lot of people are inspired by you kind of showcasing like, hey, you are naming it. This is what I have, anxiety, agoraphobia. But I am working on regulating my nervous system every day. And I'm doing some kind of exposure therapy, right? To retrain these neural pathways to feel safe in my body outside of my home. And like you said, whether it's a walk or it's you're going to the grocery store, I know you do some grocery store posts, which I think it's great because for those that have Lyme and even not Lyme, like some chronic illnesses, like the bright lights and the light sensitivity and the sounds and the sound sensitivity, like going to a grocery store can be very overwhelming. Maybe if you don't even have anything, going to a grocery store can be very overwhelming. And so like entering into a grocery store and letting your body know you're safe and that you can buy the few things that you need and leave, or like you said, go for a drive or pull over if you need to. So I think it's pretty inspiring that you're giving people the hope or inspiration to to be able to kind of work through what you're experiencing, or what they also may be experiencing, having going through some trauma with Lyme, chronic illness, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it can stem from Lyme, mold toxicity, trauma, like unprocessed emotions, all of that stuff. But people do comment and they ask, like, what would I recommend? And so I think I just want to like throw this out there for listeners. Like,
Yeah.
if you can relate, if you feel, like you're struggling with anxiety, agoraphobia, nervous system dysregulation, maybe you feel kind of like trapped in your house due to fear, start with small, safe, manageable steps. And like, initially you have to feel safe in your body and you have to feel safe in your environment. And then building from there, right? So like an example would be like, maybe it's just me and my husband driving in the car to the edge of the neighborhood, and then maybe we drive back. Or working within your window of tolerance. And so when you step out of that window of tolerance, you're no longer having a productive exposure, right? Like you're so anxious and heightened that you are not integrating a positive experience anymore. You are miserable. Like, when you're outside of your window of tolerance, a little discomfort is fine. But when you're up here, it doesn't, it's not helpful. And so
Right.
small manageable steps within your window of tolerance. And then so maybe if, yesterday we just drove to the end of the neighborhood, maybe the next day we drive to the next neighborhood, right? Or maybe the next day I drive to the end of the neighborhood with him in the passenger seat. And so it's just kind of this like, maybe we go to a brewery where we can leave whenever we're ready. Maybe we just go to a park where we're not stuck there by any type of like have to pay the bill, have to shake hands, have to walk out of the entrance or exit way or whatever. That's why I like the line dancing. I think people see that and like it feels like maybe I'm on a different level of recovery than I really am. But for line dancing, like you go and you can leave whenever you want. And that feels super fitting for me.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm sitting through a movie or a play where it's like, okay, well, an hour and 45 minutes to go. Otherwise, we wasted our money. Like, if I want to leave mid song, you just go, and that's okay. So
and no one's judging you, and you just, it's on your terms. Nobody notices, right?
Yeah. So like starting small, safe, manageable steps, that's where it's at. And going places where you feel comfortable that if you are outside of your window of tolerance, you can leave and you don't feel like you have to explain it to anybody. Oh, and I would say also having a safe person, somebody who knows your triggers, who knows what you're going through, i.e., like my husband or my sweet friend Anna Ruth, like both of them are so supportive. Having people like that who can be like, have some humor, check in, talk you through the anxiety, offer to, be open and available to getting in the driver's seat if I feel like I can't drive. Like all of that really matters.
Yeah. Yeah. And whether that be a friend or a family member or whomever, you all have someone that that you can trust, that's that safe person that can help you kind of work through that. So yeah, I think that's great. So one more question. If you like looking back at everything that you've been through with your mental health journey, is there anything that you now, Abby, as a therapist, would say to your former self that was kind of struggling and going through it? Is there any advice you would give to your former self, before you even knew you had Lyme and everything, just struggling with your mental health?
I think I would say that it's okay. Because I think a lot of what I struggled with when I was younger was thinking that the feelings were not okay. Feeling is healing, and those feelings are okay. I wish I knew how to feel my emotions. I wish I knew that it was appropriate when I was younger. And throughout my, first round of treatment, I wish I knew the importance of nervous system regulation and addressing trauma. So yeah, it's okay if you feel sad or you feel anxious. Don't push those feelings down, but maybe find a way to address them, to release them, and to create safety in your body.
That is a beautiful message. I feel like crying. That was good. Well, thank you, Abby. That was really inspirational, and love talking to you about it. And I definitely feel like a lot of people are going to connect with everything that you have to say. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And as a reminder for any listeners out there, if you are having thoughts of suicide or debilitating mental health symptoms, please call 911, 988, or present to your local emergency room, because you matter, and there are people out there who will take you seriously. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to Slice of Lyme. We're here to remind you you're not alone, your story matters, and healing is possible. Now be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. We'd love to hear from you, so send us your questions, stories, or topic suggestions by sliding into our DMs or emailing us at sliceoflymepodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, rest when you need to, speak your truth, and keep showing up for yourself.